Like and subscribe for daily videos. Teachers of Reddit, what's your most NSFW story from your workplace? In high school, we had a beloved teacher and I am still friends with him to this day. However, he viewed taking attendance as a big waste of time, and his class was enjoyable, so kids rarely skipped it, so he'd just give the class a once-over and try to notice if anyone was missing, and sometimes kids would yell out that a kid was sick. Well, on this particular day, he marked everyone as present, including a kid that was not in class, as he was busy murdering his uncle. So the teacher had to go to court and say on the record that no, he is not providing an alibi for the student, he's just terrible at attendance. The administration really got on his ass about attendance after that, and he was good about it. For a few years, and then he went back to his old ways, saying it's very unlikely I'll have another murder during my class. A girl posted videos to Vine of her penetrating herself with a banana and a hairbrush. Kids quickly found out it was her and almost every campus around knew about it. She was deemed Banana Girl, and she graduated early to avoid bullying. Sad part is, she actually died in a car crash a few years later. I subbed at a school once where we had a special ed kid who would not stop pooping in the stairwell. They had teachers escorting him from one class to another. He was theoretically supervised at all times, and yet every week or two he managed to slip away long enough to drop a deuce in the stairwell. I still pity that poor janitor. I have too many. The one that sticks out the most is the time my teaching partner and I were working after school. He went down to the hall to use the bathroom and saw a line of high school boys coming from out of the girls' bathroom. He taps one on the shoulder and asks what's going on here? Lo and behold, an honors student was in the girls' handicapped stall letting the boys' basketball team run train on her to get them pumped up for the state playoffs. Of course she was expelled, but was allowed to walk for graduation in May. Some people let their freak flags fly. This chick was 6 freak flags over Texas. Caught 2 students having sex on top of a slide on the playground after school. It was one of these slides with the covered waiting area at the top. Her face was sticking out of the front of it and his ass and feet were sticking out of the back. She saw us, another teacher and I, first and started screaming that she was stuck on the slide. He freaked out, banged his head on the inside and essentially tumbled back down the steps while trying to get his pants up. They were 5th graders BTW. Caught 2 students having sex on top of a slide on the playground after school. It was one of these slides with the covered waiting area at the top. Her face was sticking out of the front of it and his ass and feet were sticking out of the back. She saw us, another teacher and I, first and started screaming that she was stuck on the slide. He freaked out, banged his head on the inside and essentially tumbled back down the steps while trying to get his pants up. They were 5th graders BTW. School maintenance here, 2 come to mind. At one middle school a boy came running into the office to tell everyone that he saw 2 people in a stall together in the bathroom and that a girl had been blowing a guy and that the guy had a huge D, but I can't remember what word he said. He didn't use the word duck. At another middle school a teacher who had a bad case of the flu lost control of her bowels in front of her class. She must have been aware it was coming because the diarrhea started in the middle of the room and there was a huge trail of it from the middle of the room to the hall. We have custodians but another main guy and I were close by so we cleaned it up. I felt bad for her. She went home but was back a few days later and stayed for the rest of the school year. I'm sure there are more stories. Been doing this for 20 years now. There's a couple. The biggest one was my mentor was caught sharing genital pics with a student that he found on a gay website. Yes, he was married and just like that I was on my own. The one that caught me off guard was I had a student from a foreign Asian country and she came up to me after class one day asking questions about science. These questions quickly transitioned into a weird place when she started asking me out saying things like I don't mind having an older boyfriend. Bear in mind her English wasn't the best. I quickly guided her out of the classroom from then on. I've told this story several times, but here goes. I was an occasional substitute teacher in the town where I went to college. The band director often requested me to come teach if she was out sick, since I was a music major and could work with the kids on their parts. Get in for a day, and my instructions were to break the kids up by section and have them practice their parts. I spent the next hour listening to a miasma of sounds from woodwinds, brass, strings, etc., but no drumming. If you don't know any drummers, they're always playing or banging on their laps, tables, steering wheels, etc. Curious me goes to investigate the drum room, and I walked in on the token female drummer flashing her breasts to the boys in exchange for money. I will take this a different direction. My first week of teaching had its ups and downs. I was teaching a P class and had a new kindergarten class for the first time. A few minutes into class, a little 5-year-old boy raises his hand. "Mr. Cowtipper, I have a problem. My PP is really hard right now and I don't know what to do." Holding in every ounce of laughter I had, I told him I was sorry and that we would talk about his problem in a few minutes. Not long after, he raises his hand again. "Yes, Caleb? Don't worry. It's not a problem anymore," he tells me with the biggest smile on his face. Gotta love teaching elementary. Had a student run up to me and say that someone had been stabbed in the girls' room. Turns out that a 5th grader had started their period. She later got the talk when she got home. Similar shit happened to me, but in 4th grade. Had no idea what a period was, and just walked around all day thinking the blood seeping through my white jean shorts meant I was going to die. Everyone saw it, nobody said anything. Not even the teachers. And it was St. Patrick's Day. Edit, wow, my most upvoted comment is about my period. Reddit's a weird fucking place. Edit, thank you stranger, for my second ever silver, and, oddly, my second silver today. I was a teacher 2010 to 2015. I was teaching high school at an all-girls school and there was this student teacher from a local university. He was 19 or 20. He was always being a jerk to this one senior at the school. I thought it a bit odd he was always focusing on her. Fast forward a few months and it was post-graduation. I was out at a local bar and look over and see them together there. A co-worker said they had been screwing for the past few months. I asked him how he knew. There was a smaller teacher's lounge in one of the wings of the school. As there weren't normal classes in that wing, it was not frequented and the setup wasn't as nice. He said he popped in there one day and she was down on her knees blowing him. He closed the door and walked away. Not long after, the student teacher found him in his class and asked him what he saw. My coworker was a bit stunned and said he wasn't sure. The student teacher said that he should keep what he saw to himself or the truth could get twisted against him. He implied the senior would state she was going down on my coworker and not the student teacher. There were no cameras or anything in that area, so my coworker decided to keep his mouth shut. I'm a paramedic, not a teacher, but we ran a call at a high school one day for a girl that was feeling sick. After questioning her for a while trying to find out what was going on, things just weren't making sense. We get her in the back of the ambulance away from parent and teachers and she finally opens up. Apparently she recently started giving her BF oral sex and he wanted to finish in her mouth, but semen really grossed her out. So in order to get over her phobia, the BF thought a little exposure therapy would do the trick. He provided her with a Ziploc bag full of semen so she could ingest it all throughout the day. She only made it to about 10 a.m. before becoming violently ill. Poor girl, I felt so bad. My mom is a preschool teacher and here's the best story I heard so far. There was this kid who bit everything. He chewed on toys, walls, teachers and of course other preschoolers. So one time a kid comes out of the bathroom that is in one corner of the class and his pants are down and of course his willy is hanging. The second my mom notices the biting kid does too, but he's in the opposite corner of the class. He starts sprinting towards the boy and my mom does the same, but she, being in her 50s, is slower but closer to the naked kid. She gets there just barely to grab the kid who's just standing there and takes him off the trajectory the biting kid is on with his mouth open and charging like a torpedo. If she didn't get there faster, the kid would probably be scarred for life. That living torpedo was probably around 10 right now and I heard is normal now. I had just begun class, freshman comp at a community college, and was going over what the day's plan was. A student walked in a few minutes late, sat down, and pulled out his computer. Upon opening the computer, very loud moaning sounds of porn emanated into the room for approximately 3 seconds. Once he got it to stop, he shakily said, "I'm sorry." I stood at the podium and said and a couple of times and then, "Give me just a minute, guys." I stood there looking down at the podium, trying to collect my thoughts as calmly as humanly possible, so I could continue class like nothing happened. After around 15 seconds of pure and uncomfortable silence, a kid from the back of the room let out a 2-syllable, guttural chuckle. I lowered my head to behind the podium with my hands still clasping onto it above my head as I bent over and lost my shit. I laughed hysterically and uncontrollably for at least 30 to 45 seconds, emulating Stewie's ridiculous laugh from that episode of Family Guy but with far more wheezing and high-pitched squealing. The entire class started laughing with me as soon as I started. After I was finally able to collect myself, I apologized to everyone and said I was sorry, and that I had tried so hard to remain composed. Later, when telling this story to other faculty, they agreed that there's no time in pedagogy classes devoted to the appropriate reaction to poor noises being played during class, and that I did the best with what I could by not calling the kid out. I literally didn't make eye contact with him once, or kicking him out of class for something that was embarrassing enough as it was. Side note, the kid stayed for the entire class. I was impressed. DL, Dr. Kid's computer blasted porn audio. I laughed uncontrollably, then I apologized for losing composure. Not me but the woman who taught across the hall from me. She was teaching a 9th grade math class and her classroom had those old-fashioned pencil sharpeners that attach to the wall and you turn the lever to sharpen your pencil. One of her students was sharpening her pencil every day during class and seemed to take a long time to do so because each time she would stand at the back of class sharpening her pencil for 2 minutes or so. After a week or so of this, the teacher went to ask if the student needed help sharpening her pencil. Turns out the girl was putting her vag up against the pencil sharpener and was using the vibrations to get off in the middle of math class. A buddy of mine is a teacher in Kentucky and tells this story proudly. A couple of years ago the senior class was doing their walkthrough for graduation. Usually after the walkthrough the seniors are allowed to go home early. Well, a guy and a gal decided to skip the walkthrough so that they could go out to their car and fuck. Presumably while in the back seat, they decided to do anal and it led to the girl shitting all over the guy's car. By the time the walkthrough had finished the seniors were headed out to their cars and the entire graduating class walked out to the guy and gal trying to hurriedly get dressed and clean up shit from the back of the car. My friend often jokes about what a shitty situation that was. A friend, B, was f***ing with friend A and found his D-pic on his phone was actually looking for his GFS nudes, and to F with him he set the pic as his lock screen. Fast forward 5 minutes and the teacher walks in and takes the phone because she had a strict no phone policy. Another 10 to 15 minutes later the teacher asks what time the class ends and had friend A's phone on her desk and decided to check the time on that instead of the clock right behind her. Well, she saw the D-pic and didn't say anything but just handed the phone back and never took it from him again. Story time. This happened to my mother when I was in 8th grade. Some girl had written a note about how I had given out blowjobs on the back of the bus, apparently in very graphic detail. The only issue is that I had never even seen a penis in real life at that point. Also, I sat up front. Nevertheless, the school's resource officer took it upon himself to call my mother to tell her, and my dad, the news about their daughter's early morning activities. He never checked the cameras first, didn't interview myself, the bus driver or the boys on the bus. By the time they called me into the office I was already 100% guilty and they were throwing a multi-week suspension at me. I remember sitting in the office crying while they told me how disappointed my parents were in me and how my reputation was ruined. And then they checked the bus camera. Never got an apology. Added for clarity, my parents didn't believe a word of what the administration and resource officer said. They had already marched themselves to the school long before I had even been called to the office to hear about all the dicks I had been sucking. When my mom found out they hadn't even bothered to check the camera, she and my father withdrew me from school, took me to lunch and bought me a new Deftones CD. If I remember correctly, this is over 10 years ago now. One of the guys I allegedly blew ended up getting suspended after getting into a fist fight with someone who was saying some off-color shit about me, so at the very least, I'm lucky a group of guys didn't decide to capitalize on a rumor that could have made them very popular back then. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for daily videos.